Right. Thank you, everybody. We will call the City Council Committee of the Whole of December 12th, 2022 to order. The clerk will help me with the roll call, please.
Brereton.
Here.
Flurry.
Here.
Frank. Here. Freeman. Here. McGee.
Here.
Mulhall.
Here.
Porter.
Here.
Prather.
Here.
Snow.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
10 present.
Okay. Under public comment, I don't think we have anybody registered for public comment. I will make a quick comment on, as everybody I'm sure is well aware, Stellantis had sent a letter out to go ahead and actually they're going to go keep their plant. They're not going to make an announcement to do anything with their plant. They're going to have layoffs there, further layoffs. I was surprised to get that information. I received it yesterday about 1:15, and obviously we're disappointed. Certainly I know the employees there as well as the supplier employees are disappointed. They've called it idling of the plant, and I do believe that plant has been idled before in the past. I don't want to read anything more into it than that. That was their statement. They're also looking for ways to utilize the plant. I think it was called repurpose. That does not rule out making automobiles there, manufacturing automobiles there. I do know this. I do know that not only have I been in contact with the governor's office and his staff, but there have been other people, other elected officials, including state officials, other elected mayors, who realize this isn't just a Belvedere issue. It is a regional issue, and it's a state issue. And actually, I guess I would go so far as to say it's a national issue. We certainly don't like to lose any jobs idling the plant or otherwise. It was my hope that we would have an announcement if that were going to be the case. There was going to be a flip side to that, and it was going to be that the governor's efforts with all of his efforts that he had tried to do with enhancements most recently, and the EV, signing the EV Act, would provide incentives enough that they would we would have some good news with that. That wasn't the case. However, I think a lot of people, I did not make a comment on this yesterday because I didn't receive all the information. I didn't get anything from Stellantis. I got a phone call, and then I'd asked them to send me a statement so that I could make sure that I was accurate on what the comments were. And also, the governor's office did not release a statement right away, and I was waiting on that. I don't think it's helpful if we make comments when we're not informed. But I do know that it is a disappointment for all of the employees out there and all at Stellantis and the suppliers as well. I had a call today, and the media asked me if I was optimistic, and I am optimistic. I still believe that we have a lot going for us in this community. Stellantis they have a great plant here, and we have a great workforce, and I think everybody is pulling in the right direction. I know the governor's office, as I said, had been very active in dealing with Stellantis. They have been the point of contact with Stellantis in negotiating the incentives as well as the enhancements. And I know that book has not been closed by any means. So I wanted to make sure that people don't get caught up into the idling of the plant is by any means the end of it, because that's not what it is at all. I think time will tell how that plays out, and we will work the same as we have been working, not only myself, but regionally here, to ensure that if there's anything else that we can do, we'll do it. I know I had had a meeting a couple months ago, I guess, with our U.S. Senator Durbin, and obviously I felt that if perhaps the state incentives weren't enough, that it would be incumbent to go ahead and reach out to the senator on a federal level, and I did. And I thought it was a very engaging conversation. He had met with not only myself, but other members, other of our North Cog Council of Government representatives, and also R1. And I know that we had made a case for it, and I guess my point with that was in the past, it's not unheard of with this plant in particular with Chrysler. At one time when Lee Iacocca was chairman, some of you may recall that he had asked for a $10 billion federal bailout and at that time, and that was a big deal back then. They did go ahead and give Chrysler that money, and that money actually saved Chrysler. Lee Iacocca and Chrysler Company paid that back within a year, and so it was successful. So I do know that if the state and local involvement isn't enough, then my thoughts were we should explore every opportunity. I was glad to see Senator Durbin come out here, and I believe he gets it. And as I said before, I don't think this book is shut by any means. So I am optimistic. I think we have a lot of things going for us, and we will proceed the same way we have. So, and moving on under public forum, we have none. Reports of officers, boards, and special committees. Item 1, building, planning, zoning, unfinished business. We have none. Item 2, building, planning, zoning, new business. Item A, building department update. Mr. Countryman?
Thank you, Mayor. For the month of November, we issued 69 permits for a value of construction just over $4 million. Revenue of $230,000. Some to note, 10 were commercial, 59 were residential. The fuel center was issued. There's a canteen project at the original General Mills and the distillery on South State. We have in property maintenance, 22 cases open, 10 have been closed, and I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Countryman? All right, thank you, Kip. Item B.
Thank you, Mayor.
Planning Zoning Department update. Gina? Hi, Gina.
Thank you, Mayor. So not too many cases in November, just had the one for the brewery. Tomorrow we have public hearings for the old DMV and the county building on Logan Avenue. However, I anticipate having 7 cases for January. 4 cases came in today, and based on phone calls I've been working with all week, last week, I expect 3 more to come in tomorrow. So expect a pretty busy January, which is unusual. That's usually the month to relax in our office. So we'll see what that tells for the coming year. Site plans, like Kip said, lots of commercial projects going on, so lots of site plans to review. Zoning letters are kind of at a lull right now. Staff spent a lot of time in November working on Hometown Christmas, which was a pretty good success. We had some great weather for that, for the first half of the night at least. And that is the major stuff.
Alderwoman Freeman?
Thank you. So Gina, a couple things. The car wash out there on the north side, is that like done?
He did reach out 2 weeks ago, wanting to know what he'd have to do to get a building permit to start going. He was informed what was needed, haven't heard back. He is on my, his special use, I believe, is up in February, so towards the end of December, I'll be sending him a letter hey, if you need to renew this, you need to ask, and you have to be here in person. So we'll see how that plays out.
And then, Mr. Crombie, he's got a couple different projects going. The one on Pearl Street, the old DMV, and then his new one, for the indoor golf simulator thing. Is he making any progress on those?
So for the indoor golf simulator, I actually saw some advertisement hiring for bartenders and staff and stuff. So, and I think he's calling it 9-iron, I think. So that is making progress. I can tell you that the state has not really issued a gaming license. Casey's gas station, if you guys remember, that was what, a year and a half ago, and they're still waiting on the state to decide if they're getting a gaming license. Ryan's about a year out, so I don't know what the holdup is at the state, but several of the special uses that have been approved in the last year and a half are really just waiting on the state. Ryan, I believe, was waiting on the simulators to come in, and there was a delay, but yeah, I did see advertisement for staff. The DMV, that is actually a rent-to-own situation. So he is, although he currently does own the property, he has no involvement with the request going on for that.
And then my last question, the Russ Caldwell Car Wash out there by Speedway, part of that's done. Is that going to finish?
So Kip, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but he was waiting on parts that weren't coming in.
I think he wants to open the dog wash. He's still got some street or parking lot lighting to put in, some landscaping to finish. I believe he wanted to open in January, probably do a soft opening. So that's kind of where he's at, I think.
Yeah, I think part of the delay though was the chips for the menu board, the automatic payment machine was getting parts for that or something. But yeah, he was talking about wanting to get the dog wash going and then follow suit.
Okay, thank you for all of that.
Any other questions for Gina? We did have a groundbreaking at Dairy Queen, so for Dairy Queen on North State.
We
So,
did. He handed out free ice cream sandwiches in the snow. It was
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, it wasn't one of the warmer days, that's for sure. But all went well there, so I don't know what their anticipated opening date is. Is it spring, Gina?
He just got his building permit last week, so he'll probably break ground, like officially break ground in the spring when the weather.
Okay. All right, thank you. There are no other questions for Gina. We'll move on here. Item 3, Public Works unfinished business. We have none. Public Works new business. Public Works update. Mr. Anderson?
Thank you, Your Honor. Kevin Fricke has submitted his resignation, and he has accepted an assistant director's position in the village of Shanahan, and his last day will be the 20th, next Tuesday. So we will be advertising after the first of the year for a replacement in that position. That's all I got.
All righty. Questions? Alderwoman Freeman?
Thank you again. So, Brent, this has been something people talk to me about all the time. I drive Newburgh Road frequently, usually every day at different various times. Sometimes it smells bad, sometimes it doesn't. I haven't been able to quite pinpoint days and times. But is there something that we're doing that is causing it to smell at certain times? And is there something we can invest in that will prevent that?
So you're referring to the wastewater treatment plant?
Yes, sir.
And we currently have construction going on where one of the digesters is down and we're rehabilitating the digesters. So during that construction time, yes, the processes are changed up somewhat. Things aren't doing on a normal, regular basis just because of the accommodations we have to make during construction. So that's that is one of the results of that construction work. So Once that work is completed, then it should be back down to a normal and it won't be as bad. There are ways to, there's not a way to make it not smell because it's just the nature of the business. You can mask it. There's methods and ways to mask it, but that's just like spraying a fragrance to offset that smell. It's not cost effective. There's different methods to do that. That would have to be looked into, but we have never done that just because of the economics of it, of doing that. But it will get much better once the current construction project, once the digester work is finished, scheduled to be finished in probably end of February, early March.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Anderson? All right, and then 4B, we have the easement requests regarding Frontier North. Brent?
Thank you, Your Honor. A memo in your packet. Frontier North has an existing conduit in State Street, in the right-of-way in State Street, that has been compromised. And in lieu of excavating and doing work along State Street to make the necessary repairs, we have suggested and they have requested access through our Belvedere Municipal Parking Lot number 7. If you turn to the attachment that shows the location there, the Exhibit A, Utility Easement Exhibit A, you can see it in the shaded area of the route that we've established with them that will not conflict with any of our existing utilities, and they find it agreeable. Therefore, I would recommend approval of the Frontier North Utility Easement across Municipal Parking Lot number 7.
Okay. Get a motion to that effect for discussion. Motion by Alderman Porter, second by Alderwoman Prather. Thank you. Any discussion? Any questions regarding that? Alderman Snow?
Does this have any complications with the cap that's on the back part of the parking lot?
No, sir.
Alderwoman Freeman?
Thank you. So Brent, this goes in an L shape from Lincoln to North State. I know that we didn't get our funding that we were looking for electric charging stations for that parking lot that we were maybe looking to do. Is this going to inhibit, parking spaces and maybe future charging stations if we want to do that at our own expense or come up with another grant somewhere down the line?
No, this route was identified as a route that's going to avoid all those possible conflicts, looking at the ultimate improvements that we have planned for that area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Alderwoman Frank?
Is there a cost to this?
No cost.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, concerns? All right, then we have a motion there to recommend approval of the Frontier North Utility Easement across Municipal Parking Lot number 7. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
If there's any opposed? Okay, motion passed, thank you. And thank you, Brent. Item 5, other, we have under, for fire, for fiscal year 22, assistance to firefighters grant, Chief Shadle.
Thank you, Mayor. For the past couple months, myself and the other 3 fire districts in Boone County 911 have been working again on an assistance to firefighters countywide communications grant. If you guys remember back 2 years ago, we did something similar, and part of that grant application is a memorandum of understanding which explains who does what and who's the lead agency. And then all the boards have to sign the memorandum or authorize signature of that MOU because there is a cost share if the grant is awarded. So Boone County dispatch communications for fire and EMS are on analog radios. It's older technology. There's a handful of reasons why primary dispatch channels have moved to digital. PD moved to digital a number of years back. You guys would recognize this as Starcom. That's a common term used for that. And so there are many advantages to switching to Starcom. So Boone County 911 is hoping, as part of their evolution into the next generation 911, to start dispatching on a Starcom channel. What the biggest benefit to that is that the portable radio coverage would move up to like 90+% countywide. Right now, unless you're 3 miles from where the dispatch center is, portable radios don't work, but we've been able to make it work because we have vehicle radios, which are more powerful. The benefit to the Starcom radios is those portable radios will work throughout the county. It's also beneficial for dispatch redundancy. Like, for example, say our 911 center went down. They've created a coalition where the dispatch centers have basically used all the same systems and services so that they could be dispatched from anywhere. However, with the analog radio systems, you can't do that because it actually communicates by radio waves. Starcom operates more like a cell phone. So with a Starcom radio, I could be in Texas or Southern Illinois, and I could listen to the communications because it operates like a cellular network. Obviously, that type of equipment is very expensive, so 911 board had provided a grant writer to assist myself and the other chiefs to prepare the grant this year. And then we've gotten all the initial application and then the pricing and the radios and what everybody would need. So the next step is what's in your packet is that memorandum of understanding. And the most important part of that is if you'll look to the second to last page. You'll see a copy of an Excel spreadsheet. So at the bottom of the spreadsheet is Belvedere Fire. For us to switch to Starcom dispatch communications, we would need 14 dual band radios. The total cost for that would be, and the equipment would be about $155,000. Now, the nice thing about the grant is it covers 90%. So our cost share would be $15,000 if we were awarded. And like I said, we did do this 2 years ago. We weren't awarded that. So I'm going to answer 2 good questions right off the bat. The first good question is, we've bought a lot of radios. Are those still valuable? And so to answer that, 100% yes. So all fireground communications are still on analog radios, and that is the mainstream throughout the country, even in the counties that have money to spend high dollar communications. They still use the analog on the fireground. Reason being is that the analog is radio to radio. It doesn't rely on a tower. So there's also some other benefits to analog radios. So it's standard, and MABUS uses analog radios. So on-scene communications will still be on all the radios, and so we still have that equipment. This will just be dual band radios that will actually have both, and so they'll operate on our normal channel on the fireground and then also the dispatch channel. So the second really good question is, well, what if we don't get the grant? Are we going to see, am I going to budget for $155,000 next year? No, basically the equipment's so expensive that we wouldn't be able to switch to Starcom as a county if some type of grant funding didn't go through. So what I'm seeking tonight is a motion to execute the memorandum of understanding to apply for the FY 2022 AFG Regional Communications Grant.
Okay. Motion by Alderman Snow, second by Alderman Stevens. Any questions or comments? Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you. So, Chief, you're right, we have just purchased a bunch of radios. I think that we were trying to get everybody to have the same ones, and we're working towards that. I think we maybe even, did we use ARPA funds for some of that, or did we just go into the capital? Either way, are we still going to be working towards getting more of those so everybody has the same one? And if everybody has one of these analogs that's also digital, then wouldn't the ones we just bought kind of be obsolete if they're going to use these instead?
So that's a good question. So the first question you asked is about the ARPA funds. No, we just purchased those with capital. We had 5 a year for 3 years in a row. And so, it was about 13,000 for 5. And so what I'll do for my capital budget this year is not ask for that last 5 radios to accomplish that goal of each member having their own portable radio in case we get the grant. And if we didn't, then year 2, I will have that, I'll push that out 1 year. As far as the plan for everybody to have a radio, these radios would be tied to the seats in the vehicles. And then so whoever's either on duty or comes in for a recall would have access to these radios. Since we do operate normally on 2 channels, all the company officers have 2 radios. So they would have their dispatch. I would carry one on a radio strap, and then my one for the fire ground would be right in my fire coat. So those company officers will have 2 radios. One of the big problems with not having enough radios is when we'd have like a department live fire burn training and we only had enough radios for the vehicles, is that we didn't have enough radios for people while we were training. So we'd scramble, try and get our old radios, our old HT-1250s. And then a lot of those either had bad batteries or didn't work, and we were doing live fire training with them. So that was a concern. So these radios would be tied to seated positions in the vehicles, and then those other radios would then be used for the tactical. So everyone would have that in their coat. We'd be really good with radios for a while if we got this grant. So that two-year case, yeah, we'd have plenty of radios, but these would never be issued out except like for myself. I have one. Maybe the officers or people who live in town that, regularly respond for recalls would potentially have a couple of these. But so if we get the grant, yes, we'd be really good with radios for some time being, because we'd be getting 14 instead of the 5. And then if we don't get the grant, we'll look at that year 2 expense. There are benefits to everybody having the radio, but there's also benefits to guys on duty being able to have 2 radios. So the gentleman in charge of radio communications and I sometimes have lengthy discussions about what's best for that. And I won't be asking for the 5 additional radios unless that this doesn't go through.
Thank you. I appreciate anybody that looks for grants. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other questions? I think it's important also to note, I don't know, it's in here, but Boone County 911 paid the $4,000 for a grant writer to assist us with this application, and it isn't often that you get $155,306 worth of equipment. And ultimately, if we can obtain this grant, it costs us 10% of that, $530. So if you're a bargain shopper, I would say that's probably a pretty good bargain, pretty good deal. So any other questions or comments? If not, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Motion to execute the memorandum of understanding to apply for the 2022 AFG Regional Communications Grant. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And then we have item 5B, discussion takeoff on the tax levy. I know, I think Alderman Snow had mentioned last time he would like this placed on the agenda for this evening. I think it's a good idea. So with that being said, I had actually provided a starting point, I guess you would say, with the levy. I tried to correlate that with some of the expenses that we've had and some of the rate increases that the levy and flat lines that we've had as well. I think Ms. Hanson had pointed out in her memo that some of the issues that the city is facing, certainly we've had recently with the ambulance issue, that is going to be a big unknown for us right now. We do know that it is going to be an expense. But she had also pointed out some of the good things. Blue Cross Blue Shield rates will not increase through December 31st of next year. Our building permits and growth continue resulting in future EAV increases. As you're aware, we did have our contracts negotiated, including wages increases, and that runs through April 2026. I have made it a point, and I know you fully understand it, that probably isn't the best time to negotiate a contract at an inflationary rate that we have now. But we did, and we will have to deal with those. But we're at least set through 4 years. We also have IMRF employee contribution rates expected to rise for the calendar year '23. Our levy, as I had said, our levy amount has remained flatlined since 2017. Our police pension fund levy request increased by $125,839. Our firefighters' pension levy request increased by $10,319. Our IUOE insurance rates increased by 5%. Low interest rates on investments. We have low interest rates on investments currently. And of course, the cost of the new ambulance contract, which is still unknown. Hopefully, we'll know a little bit about that as we receive the proposals back, requests for proposals back. And I don't have to tell anybody that in general, the cost of materials, labor, and fuel continue to increase significantly, as well as groceries and everything else that goes with our quality of life, our livelihood. So those are just some things that she had touched on. I also wanted to point out that since we had, find that. Bear with me here just a second. There we go. So dating back, since we had flatlined 6 previous years of our levy that had been flatlined, the historic look at our increases in our pension levies have been an increase at the fire level of $373,782, which is an increase over that period of time that we had a flat line on the levy of 43.2%. And then with the police, that total change has increased $452,084. Again, while we continue to flatline our levy, and that increase has resulted in a 41.3% increase over that same period of time. So I did want to put it into perspective what I was thinking whenever we proposed this, and I will turn it over if anybody wants to start with any of the discussions. You're up. Alderman Snow?
I'm curious if we have any realistic expectations of what the other ramifications of Stellantis going idle, as it were, with revenues, whether it's sales tax. I know water and sewer poses an issue because they are a large user and offset some of the cost to the residents and stuff, but what other ramifications that might occur?
We certainly don't have figures. I mean, I assume they will continue to pay the real estate taxes. As far as sales tax, we don't have those figures as far as what we get from that. I think Mr. Anderson had looked into the water revenue, correct? But otherwise, I don't have sales tax numbers.
I guess good news, bad news on the water sewer end of it. I pulled some numbers today. I haven't had a chance to go through them, but just quick glance at them today. Since 2017, their water usage, sewer usage has steadily decreased over that time period. So the fact that they're idle now is going to be a hit, but it won't be as bad as what we were experiencing or what kind of revenues we were looking at from them in 2017. I think 2017, we were looking north of $400,000 a year in revenues, and this last year, I think we were between 150 and 200,000. So it's still a substantial amount, but not as much as it has been in years past. So, but we'll go through it with more detail, and that'll be reflected, of course, in our budget requests going forward.
Continue.
And obviously, it is gonna impact our sales tax revenue, and so I think it's gonna be more incumbent upon maintaining what the administration has requested for the tax levy, to maintain its use and the need for the revenue.
Alderwoman Freeman?
That was basically, he basically touched on some of my questions, like how much real estate tax property tax does Stellantis pay? And being as how they still own that property, I'm assuming that they're still on the hook for all that, right?
Yeah, I think they pay about $250,000 a year in real estate taxes.
I mean, I said it before, I'll say it again, our allegiance to them is very much lopsided to their allegiance to us. Chrysler's gone. It's Stellantis, and they're not an American car company. Though they employed about 600 people from Belvedere out of when they were running full speed of 4,500 employees, actually about 600 were actually from Belvedere. Their profits go overseas. And, you know, our governor gave them a whole lot of incentives at the expense of the hourly worker out there, and it didn't seem to do any good. So I think we should plan ahead, as, you know, idling a plant pretty much means closing it, and I think that's how we should look at things.
Well, you know, I will say this. Stellantis, whether they be Chrysler, whether they be Fiat, whether they be Benz, we've had other owners that have been good for Belvedere, Stellantis included. I don't think that it's fair to say that Stellantis hasn't been a valuable partner here. We would be whistling a different tune if we in fact had some better news out of them. As I had said before, idling the plant, we have idled at it before in the past. It does not mean that we are going to have a plant closing here. And it's very difficult to be able to try and have individuals, elected officials, negotiate with them and send a bad message that in fact they're not wanted, because they are. 600 employees that may have been employed at that plant, and I don't care really if it's 50 that's left. I think if you'd ask every one of those individually, I think they would put an emphasis on, I would like to keep my job and I would like to keep them there, and that's exactly how I represent the city of Belvedere's stance with Stellantis. And you know, I just ask everybody to try and remain calm, and let's not say anything that we can't take back. I don't think that that's not advantageous. It's certainly not advantageous for me. I don't think it's advantageous for the governor's office. I think he has done a tremendous job trying to be the point of contact here to make sure that you know, we've done everything we can here, not only locally but statewide. What they have done, he took 2 shots at it. He come here and signed the as I had said before, the EV bill. And he also came here, he also has inked the incentive enhancements that go above and beyond that. So even Stellantis' announcement pointed out that they still, and I had discussions with them, and they point out that, you know, this plant, this plant is being idled. And that's all the information that I have. I don't have anything further than that. So when we talk about them, I hope we keep that in mind. There's nobody throwing in the towel here. There's nobody throwing our hat in. And I do believe we're going to be, I'm still optimistic. And I think there's a lot of things at stake that makes me optimistic. We have a plant here, 5,300,000 square feet. We have a plant that has always been invested in by Chrysler, by Benz, by Fiat, and even Stellantis that have made investment in here of private funding, private money. And I believe that we have a government within the state, and I'm hopeful federal, that will continue to work towards keeping them here. And I know that's my job, and I'll continue to do that. So I would hope that we would refrain from, I don't want to throw any darts at Stellantis or anybody else for that matter. I think they're a valuable business. Obviously, we'd love to have them stay, and there's a whole lot of discussions to be had between now and whatever that decision may be. So, any other comments? Alderwoman Frank?
I'm wondering how Stellantis will affect the suppliers that we have,
Yeah.
their jobs. You know, would they also, you know, be shut down because they don't have a job, or maybe even Cassens?
No, that's a great point. And, you know, obviously if they're idled, you know, then the suppliers too. It affects the suppliers and the supply chain. So it is a cascading effect. It has a cascading effect with all those employees too. And so that's a good point. So yes, obviously we would like to see them manufacturing vehicles. I would. I think you would too. Manufacturing vehicles and the suppliers, all the Chrysler employees, the UAW employees out there, the rank and file at Stellantis, and certainly, I don't know, I think at one time there was between 23 and 2,500 supply employees that also were out there. So they're all affected, and we need to do everything that we can to make sure that we can keep them. Alderman Snow?
And I guess my whole point for having this on the agenda was to, if anybody's going to make any revisions, to discuss it now instead of it becoming an issue next week when we do the second reading. So
Yeah.
I don't plan on making any revisions myself, but and so we've had issues in the past where it becomes a big debate and a lot of confusion at the last minute. And even at to the point of somebody started the role of not approving the levy, and we had to have a special one to redo it. So just tossing that out there.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think that's what we're here for, is we can have a discussion, and there is no wrong, there is no right. Everybody has an opinion, and we've got a starting point now, so the floor is open. Alderman Burden?
Thanks, Mayor. So I guess that's my cue, because I've been a pretty strong proponent of no tax increases this whole time, but at the same time, I do realize that that's not sustainable. And that's why I'm always trying to make any cuts to the budget that we can make. But the purpose of the flatlining of the tax it wasn't to come back in 6 years and smack everybody with a huge increase. I just feel that undoes everything that, we tried to do. So without getting into too much, I would definitely like to see a reduction of this levy. And then I think that forces the city to live within their means, to live within the budget and focus on the 3 priorities, which should be police, fire, and public works. And the other stuff is just fluff on top of it. So I'll make a motion to amend the levy. Can I do that?
Were you-
Attorney?
I would actually recommend doing that second reading. You can't actually amend it tonight.
Well, we can come
You
with
can
a
discuss it, but you're gonna have to actually make the motion to amend next week, like we did we had this
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
Last year, the year before.
Yes, we did.
But
Well-
certainly, Alderman Byrd, and we can come to some consensus, I guess. Before then, I don't mean to cut you off by any means. You have the floor, and, continue, finish.
Thanks. So what I'd like to see happen is maybe a 3.5 increase. I mean, I don't want to see any increase at all. I'd like to see us cut spending, but I understand. So maybe a 3.5 instead of pushing 8.
Okay. Any other discussion? Alderwoman Frank.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Alderman Brereton, but what I want to ask Shannon, because I do believe the police and the fire pension, those are out of our control. That should be into the tax levy. But I'm just wondering if Shannon has any proposals or ideas of what direction we could go in if we were going to make some cuts?
Yeah. Ms. Hanson?
So actually, what I'm going to pass out real quick here is we did put a few figures together showing a few different options. When you get it, you'll see one is with the police, fire, and the liability insurance, which are our 3 greatest differences in what we levy for and what we actually pay out. And then it kind of goes down from there, just fire and police pension, and then just a few different straight percentage increases. So I will go ahead and pass those out for you to take a look at.
All right. And Ms. Hanson, you want to give us a narrative there on what you handed out?
Sure. So again, option 1 pulls the fire, police, and liability insurance into it along with the library request. And on the right-hand side, you can see what it would be per year, about per year for each parcel owner and what that amount would be per day. Option 2 is just your fire, police pension, and the library request. And then we go into option 3 is increasing the city. October CPI was 7.7, so we took that, and then the library request, which is actually the figures that were in the announcement, was that option 3. That's what we used. Option 4 is just increasing city by 7.5% plus the library request. Option 5 is city by 5% plus the library, and then options 6 and 7 are actually just increasing both the city and the library by flat percentages.
Alderman Porter?
Thank you, Mayor. So, yeah, that's one thing I did want to discuss too, was the library, because I noticed that they're asking for actually a higher increase than even the city is. And I think that they, we held them flat the last time, just like we stayed flat, so I think that's important that they have an increase no more than what we have, unless they can, prove that they actually really need it. I noticed that it doesn't include a pretty healthy pay raise for the director and assistant director, and also, I wanted to ask, because I've heard something floating around that there's a problem with the figures in their budget with the IRMF. Did we get that straightened out?
Ms. Hanson?
Sure. So one thing you had on your desk when you came in tonight was a copy of next year's wages for the library employees, and that was something that Alderman Porter had requested. When we did receive that information, we noticed that the calculations for the IMRF contributions was actually at a much higher rate. That was the rate from 2018. So we did go back and recalculate with next year's rate, which is 4.91%. Let me just find real quick here. I think the difference was about $33,000. So I have been told that the library will be amending their budget to show that difference, because their budget will be decreased by $33,000.
Yeah, that amount is $33,931.25 difference. And so the budget will be amended, as Ms. Hanson said, but the levy wasn't accounted for in the levy ask. As well, if I may point out that, and I hear this all the time, I hear, well, so-and-so, somebody doesn't like the library, and I get so tired of hearing that, because that is not true. But I also know that the council, myself, this administration is accountable to the taxpayers, and that's who we're accountable to. I know under this levy amount, it shows the director with a 5.95% pay increase, and the assistant with a 5% pay increase. I know just negotiated contracts with 5 of our labor contracts, and we don't have anything like that in there. And so I want to keep it in perspective. I'm not trying to pile on anybody, but I do believe that we have to be forthright with what we point out. And it doesn't, and that means whether it be good or whether it be bad, as long as it's factual. And so when you look at, I think Ms. Hanson pointed out a $33,000, almost $34,000 difference, which works to the favor, for them. When you point that out, I think that is apples. I think that's actual. That's not looking at information that has not been corrected. It has been corrected, and I think you should know that. So, Alderwoman Freeman?
Thank you. So, for the library people that are here, the almost $34,000 extra budget surplus that you guys are looking at, are you going to revise your request then as well? Okay. Okay, so your request won't stand at
Can
62,000.
we, let's have, so we can have a public dialogue here that everybody else can follow. Dawn, would you please join me up here, if you don't mind? Thank you. All right. Just state your name, please.
Dawn Brooks.
Okay.
So, yes, this was brought to our attention today by Shannon. Thank you for that. We were unaware. I called an emergency meeting. We're meeting on Zoom on Wednesday, and we will revote. And then we'll have a corrected submission for the tax levy request and the budget.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Brooks while she's up here? I don't want to, Alderman Porter?
I was just curious about the bookmobile. It doesn't show anything for the budget for May 23rd through April 24 of 2024. Do you know, like, how much this is going to cost altogether yearly?
Off the top of my head, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can get that information and get it to you.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Brooks? Alderman Burden?
Thanks again, Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, looking over the library budget, I had a couple questions. First one, I see that the 21, 22, you had income of 2,500 for.
Thank you.
Oh.
I was just looking over your shoulder.
Yeah, no problem. I'm happy to share. For the book sale, but then, so the upcoming budget, we have $10,000.
Right, because of COVID, the Friends were not doing their book sale. They have their own separate board, and they are planning on continuing the book sales starting this year again. So we're projecting that that is what we're going to get from them. That's what we used to get pre-COVID.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I guess then I'll address the bookmobile as well, because, I mean, that went from a 0 to a 16,000. Just kind of on a, I don't know, it followed a controversial tax levy.
Can you show me where you're looking?
Yeah, right here, I'm sorry, 51590.
Oh, it was 0 in the first column because we didn't have the bookmobile that year.
I understand, but, so that's an increase, you know, it's more expense, the bookmobile.
Yes.
So we're looking at about 16 or 12,000 to
That's-
operate the
I
bookmobile?
think that's our current year now, 22. So in the expenses down here, it has the collection. Where are you looking? 50?
Yeah, I'm on the second to the
This is-
last page. I think that might be,
This page here is our income.
yeah. this
These
is
down here are
expenses.
expenses.
Mhm.
So the bookmobile collection, $2,000. The insurance, $3,000. Operating expenses, $12,000. Currently, we're at $10,070.87. That's all of the maintenance, the yearly, I don't know cars. But you have to have the inspection done and the gas and all the upkeep on it, yes. Mhm.
Yeah, that's kind of my point, because we went from 0 just to another, maybe it, I don't know how necessary of an expense that is. Just something I noticed looking over the budget.
Well, I will say that the bookmobile has been making a great impact in our city. It has brought in a lot of new card users, which is why it's also on, our income side of things as well.
Yes, so if I may, and I see that as well, but you have a 0. So how much money is this bookmobile gonna bring in?
Well, that is a good question. I believe that is probably a typing error. Unless it was or put under a different line, because most of the money that brings in from the bookmobile itself is from the cards, I believe. But again, that's a question that I can get, and I can answer you when I get more information.
Okay, no, thanks, appreciate it. And then just real briefly, I'm gonna touch on the The other big increase, well, the real big increase, yeah, the wages going from 496,872 to 554,575.
So the wages is, of course, minimum wage increase. Now, what is included in that is if every single person on the library gets the full merit increase. That is not necessarily what is going to happen. So the 5% for the director, 5% for the assistant director, that may not be 5%. We budgeted it so that we're safe if they get a 5% merit increase, but it's not, they haven't had the reviews yet.
Okay, thanks again. Not trying to put you on the spot just because you're right here and we got the budget.
I get it.
No pressure. One last question. I just have a question. So what is the expense for legal? What's that? Because I see that increased as well.
Because we brought an attorney on now we employ an attorney now for various purposes. We've used him for questions. I believe that he's going to be working on some intergovernmental stuff. Anytime we run into problems, we would contact him and he would, stuff that we don't know. We're all volunteers, so we don't have a background in any of that.
Yeah, like I said, no pressure.
No.
And I just wondered, is that something City Attorney Drella should be handling? Because we're paying for this.
Nope, and that's one thing I strive to remind everybody, the library is actually not a department of the
We're
city.
separate.
I cannot legally represent them. They are actually, by their own statute, authorized to retain their own counsel, buy their own property, employ their own employees, and the city has no say in it whatsoever by statute. So, no, I cannot actually legally. Every once in a while, former directors would call me, and I'd always answer the question along the lines of, I'm not your attorney, I can't give you legal advice, but I'm actually ecstatic they're getting their own legal counsel. If for no other reason on personnel issues, when they decide to discipline or perhaps terminate an employee, they make sure it gets done correctly so that we're not stuck dealing with that mess later on.
Okay, well, thanks to you both. Didn't mean to put you on the spot either, but those are just some of the points I had in the library budget. Thank you again.
Okay. Alderwoman Frank?
Maybe I know this, but the mortgage, is that the church? Is that the revenue you get from the church?
All of our mortgages were combined into one. It's the church, it's the empty lot, it is our rental property. So all of those that have been
So
purchased.
it's
This was done before me, but yeah, it's all the mortgages that were purchased, the properties, and then they were lumped into one.
But is it the
mortgage.
it's the money that you're receiving? Or is it the money that you owe?
What line item is?
It's 60103.
No, that's what we pay on
Okay.
our mortgage.
Is the library not paid for?
The library is, it's the church property, the empty lot, and the rental property.
That's what I'm trying to
Yeah,
to
all of
figure
those
out that
three
we.
properties were
Okay.
purchased. It's under one mortgage payment.
So it's all those minus the library, because the library does not have a mortgage.
Correct.
Thank you.
And if you look at income, they get 18,000 of that total
For
back.
rent.
Of that 32,000, they get 18,000 of that back in rent. You'll see that. 48001. So their mortgage is 32,000, their mortgage is $32,240, and their rent, is 18,000. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Any other questions for Ms. Brooks? She's probably getting tired of standing up here. You want me to get you a chair?
No, I'm
Okay.
good.
All right. Alderman Fleury?
Thank you, Mayor. And so the increase, obviously you're going to have a meeting and it might be reduced what you're asking for, but the increase is for, the majority of that increase is for wage increase due to minimum wage raises?
Correct.
Okay, so I know we've had this debate the last couple of years. Each year the library asks for more money because they have to cover the wages for something that they weren't involved with. They was mandated they have to pay everyone minimum wages. So I would just like to see that if, this year we've had obviously been able to keep the rate at zero since 2017. However, some of the reasons that the city is looking to increase the levy is because of increased costs. So if we're going to approve the city's costs for increased costs because of fire pension fund and the police fund, I would think that it would be hard for someone to argue not to increase the library's request because they're asking for the same thing because there's an increase in prices. Everywhere we go, there's increase in prices. So of course, I like, Shannon, that you've given us these options where option 1 and 2 were the high end of it and kind of met a medium one of option 3 where we could, not be fully tipping into the reserve funds, but also understand that we do have to increase somewhat to not be put into a hole. So it's kind of in the middle of the road, not asking for everything. And I agree too that we have to live within our budgets, but the best budget in the world doesn't account for the record inflation we're having now and the increase of cost for everything. So I think that although none of us here want to raise taxes for anybody, I think it's naive to think that we can just go on the same tax levy for the next 50 years because that's what we've always done. I mean, there are increases. So I think that it seems like that option 3 is a reasonable increase, not asking for everything. And it seems to me what the library is asking for is a reasonable increase based on their requirements to meet minimum wage requirements. So that's just my comment on the situation.
If I might, I do want to, I know that you had mentioned that the city had a flat line on their levy increase. That's true, but the library actually did not. So 3 of those years, they had a 3.55, they had a 2.15 in 21, 3.55 in 19, and a 2.52 in 22. So they've had a total of, 8.2% increase. So they, in fact, the city did flatline theirs, but technically they did not flatline the library, so to be accurate. So, yes, Alderman Fleury.
Right, and our levy is approximately $5 million, and our budget is $20 million. So we do have revenue that comes in from other sources where the library doesn't have that same ability.
Yeah, I didn't say that they didn't. I just wanted to make sure that we understood that if we're looking at apples and oranges, we need to make sure we're clear. Alderwoman Frank?
Thank you, Mayor. I understand where you're coming from, but I want people to know it's not easy for some of our taxpayers. We're getting it from the District 100, we're getting it from the Park District, we're getting it from gas, we're getting it from the food, we're getting taxed like crazy in one of the states that has the highest tax rate. So I understand, that we need to do this, but not a lot of us can afford it. And I'm always going to defend the taxpayer and be their spokesperson. So we have to be careful about what we're doing.
Thank you, Alderwoman Frank. Alderman Snow, and then Alderwoman Freeman.
So to reiterate Mr. Fleury's comments, the library's main source of income is the tax levy. They don't have sales tax. They don't have a lot of other things that come in like we get, particularly if the economy is doing well, we reaps the rewards of that. They do not. And again, they do have the ongoing expenses, and their expenses are going up just like everybody else's, supplies, materials, everything. And if you wind up cutting the budget, their resources, they will wind up reducing their hours of services hugely. It's, people that rely and enjoy the library will tell you that it's worth the bang for the dollar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alderwoman Freeman. Thank you, Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you. So I'm not gonna quibble over $12,000 for a bookmobile that provides literacy to our community. and our county, for that matter. As an entity of the city within this county, I think it's to all of our benefit if literacy is prevalent in Boone County. You know, people that say, you know, $10,000, $12,000 is just outrageous to provide some people with literacy that may otherwise not be able to get it. I noticed are the same ones. 9 aldermen in this room, I think I was the only nay, voted to spend $6,000 to upgrade the lettering on our water tower so that it matched the lettering behind the mayor. We could have gone with just the standard lettering, but they voted to spend an extra $6,000 for lettering on a water tower, yet we're gonna quibble over $10,000 for literacy in our community. I find it ludicrous. I will be opting for option 2, option 3, or option 5.
Okay, anybody else? Alderman Burden?
Thanks again, Mayor. Just to touch on how I have to, or, you know, people keep mentioning inflation, cost of living. Nobody really puts it into perspective where the money is coming from to fund the city. It's coming from the people that are facing these same issues as well. I just think sometimes it's kind of backwards, and that's all.
Okay. You know, I did say this last time, and I'll just mention this again, because I think whenever we discuss how the taxpayers' money is going to be spent, I think we need to be forthright, and I think we need to be prudent about how we spend our money. We talk about, and I know we had Mr. Rivolo up here a couple weeks ago, maybe, or last week. Time flies. But anyhow, you know, and he had mentioned that there's a lot of expenses that they have at the library, at the building itself. And I know with steps and what have you. And I have no doubt about that. It's a beautiful building, but it takes a lot of upkeep. And I don't know what the purchase price of the bookmobile was, but I do know this. I do know with the city of Belvedere, we should prioritize all of our purchases that we make. We had a priority with a piece of equipment that the fire department had purchased. Come to find out, that equipment, after I'd come into office, that equipment wasn't going to be utilized for what we thought it could be. We spent $236,000 for that piece of equipment, and that was a mistake in my opinion, and we sold it. We got rid of it. We sold it for $210,000. So at some point or other, I think the point is that we prioritize whatever we do. We try to. Our expenses, especially our big ones, it all comes out of the, Alderman Burden's right, it all comes out of the taxpayer's wallet, and that's where it comes from. And I think we have to be prudent, and we have to remember that. I mean, quibble over, you know, 12,000, 6,000, whatever, but by and large, it does add up. And when we are spending money with a levy request, it is up to the council to do that for the library. There's nobody else that can do it. I mean, you can request what you want, but it's up for the council to support that. And, you know, so that's your call. So however you see it, I've made my point. Whatever, if we can find some middle ground, common ground on that, that's certainly going to make it easier for us, Ms. Hanson, moving forward. So, floor is still open. Alderman Porter.
Talking again about the ambulance situation that we have, is there anything at all that you can share with us that maybe, like the expenses? I mean, I've heard $800,000 to $1 million is what they charge, you know, to contract it out, but what about in-house? Do we have any numbers at all yet about bringing it in-house, how it compares to that?
No, and we're off, that's actually a topic for another discussion. When we get the RFPs back, and we propose what the council will see when we see the request for proposals, part of that will include, one of those will include what it costs to do that in-house. So that'll be a topic for another day. Thank you. Anything regarding the levy discussion that we've Alderman Snow.
So at this point, tentatively, we will possibly be making a motion to reduce the library levy by 34,000 potentially at this point. Other than that, is anybody going to be pushing for? I know Rick wants to go to reduce, but does anybody have any more comments on that? So we hash it out now.
Alderman Porter?
Well, just that I think that we should keep the library the same as whatever we decide for the city, pretty close to it.
Thank you. Dawn, I'm sorry. Thanks for hanging in there. I appreciate it.
If you need to get up, bring your microphone back there.
Yeah, we'll bring you out a microphone. Thanks. Alderman McGee?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I would like to support option number 5. I think we're going to have to come to a compromise somewhere, and in my opinion, that's a pretty good compromise.
Okay. Alderman Byrd?
Thanks one last time, Mayor. Just to state, I'm going to agree with Alderman Porter. Whatever happens, I don't think the libraries should be higher than the city's levy. Thanks again.
Okay. Anybody else? Alderman Frank?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question. So next Monday, we will get the amended budget for the library?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And moving forward to that point, do we have any kind of a consensus as to what we may want to do with it? I think we've had, some good discussion regarding that. What the levy truly means. There's a point where we have expenses. Library has them as well. And then there's also the point of, the taxpayers, which is a very important point. So how about everybody in favor of, we have 2 proposals here. One was the original one, and then we have a discussion regarding option 6. Options, I'll get you. Give me just a minute. And then we have option 6 right now. Those are the only 2 that we have. Alderwoman Freeman?
So I just wanted to ask, Ms. Hanson, option 1, how much of that's the original, how much of an increase is that? Because we've got increasing the city CPI 7.7, 7.5, 5.0, 3.5, 3.0. How much is that option 1 actual increase?
So the percentage increase for option 1 is actually 15.3% for both total for city and the library.
Actually, that wasn't the proposed option. Option 3 was.
Right.
These were just options that we thought that we would bring. Ms. Hanson and I both thought that it would be good to be able to put it into perspective regarding the amounts. And there's 7 options there. Option 3 was the original, the one that I presented based upon what we know that we have expense-wise, and what we, some of the unknown as well. The fact also that we'd flatlined the levy for 6 years, and option 6 is the alternative here that was brought up by Alderman Brereton. So, anybody else have any thoughts? Alderwoman Freeman?
So then option 5 is the compromise between 6 and 3.
Is that what you're suggesting?
That's my suggestion, yeah.
Okay. Option 5, yeah.
That was also the option suggested by Alderman McGee.
Option 5? Okay. Okay. Alderman Brereton, Alderwoman Frank, and then I see Alderman Porter, I think, raised his hand. So, Alderman Brereton?
Thanks again, Mayor. I know I said last time was last time, but, yeah. So I can appreciate the option 5 compromise. I appreciate where that's coming from. It's still a little tough. Yeah, it's just kind of tough because we don't want to get in trouble with the city's finances in a bind. You know, I kind of would like to lean toward option 6, just because, you know, that's what we typically saw in the past, maybe a 3 or a 3.5%. But then we took it to 0. Those are my thoughts. I like option 6, but I can appreciate option 5.
That's a great comment, Alderman Brereton. One of the reasons you saw those 3s and 2s and 1s before the 5 or 6 year period where we had a flat tax was former Mayor Brereton, even once we were home rule night, decided that he wanted to maintain our levy to comply with tax caps, even though we weren't required to comply with them. That's why those were limited that way, one of the reasons. Tax caps this year, the levy would be 5%, which is the option 5, if we were going to comply with it.
Thanks.
Okay, Alderwoman Frank?
Thank you, Mayor. So the bottom line for the library, those numbers are going to change on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Will we get those in our packet on Friday?
Yes.
Okay.
It depends, because you're meeting Wednesday night, correct? So if they can get them to the clerk in time, they could make the packets. The packets are prepared on Thursday.
Right.
By Thursday.
Because I think I need to know what the bottom dollar is before I make what options I'm going for. But I can lean towards 5 or 6.
Okay. Options 5 or 6. Okay. All right. Well, that information will be forthcoming. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Porter?
Yeah, I would say I'm leaning towards option 5 also. That sounds like a pretty good compromise. We have to, also, I'd like to see us get our reserves back up to, you know, our emergency reserves up higher than they are, because it just seems like we could get ourselves in trouble with having 3.5 months reserve if we have a major issue, you know.
I do. So I think we're at 3.5 months, correct? Ms. Hanson?
Yeah, I think we're a little higher than that, probably 4.5, 4 or 4.5 right now, just because we had taken that second ARPA payment and put it in a CD, short-term CD. So we have a little extra, a little more than we normally do right now because of those funds.
Okay. Thank you, Alderman Porter. Alderman Snow?
And I'm going to lean toward the original option 3. The administration went through and spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out where they could cut and potentially cut based on the resources of the property tax. And I'm going to stay with the original request.
Okay. Alderwoman Prather?
Yeah, we have so many different unknown variables coming up this next year. I would not want to put the city in financial shortfall not knowing what we're walking into. Because ultimately, we have to negotiate some sort of ambulance service for our city, and that literally does have life or death ramifications for people. So I think we should just kind of keep that in mind when weighing these options. And I would actually tend to be in agreement with Alderman Snow and would probably be leaning more towards option 3.
Okay, do you think we can come to a consensus here on one or the other as far as, it'll be much easier as we go forth here. Any compromise? I will tell you this from my standpoint is, you know, we had done all the known expenses that we were going to face or have faced. The unknowns, as Alderwoman Prather points out, are the ones that might keep us up at night. I know that we're going to have, we are going to have sewer plant expenses. We are going to have a new well that we're going to be sinking. So those are all things I do, though, certainly here. You know, I would like to, if we could, I would like to flatline it, obviously. But I don't think that's good business. But I would be open to the, you know, 5% or 3.5%, either one. But I do believe that we have to get into a trend, at least where we are watching expenses, but we are not flatlining levy requests for a period of, you know, over half a decade. None of the other taxing bodies do that. They just don't. They can't, and they do not. So really, the city and the taxpayers, we have a city to run, we have services to provide, and we're going to find out how expensive that is since we're out, since the Lifeline contract now, we're out from under that. And so whatever we can do, as I'd said, I'd put the option 3 out there initially because I felt that over a period of time and with some of the unknowns, but I also understand the economic situation that we're in. Trust me, inflation's high, everything costs. Alderman Baird, and I think hit the nail on the head, it costs everything. And Alderwoman Frank, you know, for groceries, for fuel, everything. So if we could come to a consensus regarding those two, I would like to be able to prepare for next week without having to go over this. If we can't, we'll do it again. Alderwoman Prather?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out the difference, if you look at how it's broken down per year and per day, the difference between option 3 and option 5 is literally 4 cents per day to the taxpayer.
I agree. I asked Ms. Hanson to put that out there. So, yep, fully understand. So what do we want to do? Anything? Alderman Baird?
Last time.
Yes,
Thanks.
no.
Thanks.
There
Okay.
is, when we walk out of here, that's the last time.
Well, I appreciate it, everybody. Thanks. I like option 6, but I'm willing to compromise to option 5. I don't think I can compromise anything, any of the options 1 through 4.
Okay, thank you. Alderwoman Frank?
Thank you. I'd just like to see what the final number is from the library before
Okay.
I put my seal of approval on
Okay.
which option I would go with.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. Anybody else? All right, nothing else? We will, we don't have any. Sorry, oh, I'm sorry. Natalie, Miss Alderwoman Mulhall. Okay. All right, then it'll give us some food for thought. I think we're a lot closer than what we were. It's never easy, believe me. So with that being said, that's all we have tonight on the agenda. Could I get a motion to adjourn, please? Motion by Alderwoman Frank, second by Alderwoman Prather. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Is there anybody want to stay? Okay. For the record, we adjourned at 7:33 PM. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time.